Hey everybody, this is Mr. Moppin coming at you again with another 8-Push video. We're continuing our look at topic 5.10, modern campaigns. And when we're talking about modern campaigns, assuming that you're, a candidate running for president, there are a number of things that you have to be, consistently keeping in mind in terms of, what you need to do to ultimately win win the election. One of the things that might not seem, that important, but actually is, are the creation of your campaign's logos and color schemes and slogans and things like that. One of certainly the most impactful of the last 50 years for sure has been the Trump campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." That acronym MAGA, has been imprinted into the American lexicon. And the Trump campaign really tapped into something that Americans wanted to hear at a given time. You always see Trump, prominently as a last name, which is, it's a brand name really in America. So that plays very well. If you're running for president, almost always you're going to be using red, white, and blue, same colors as the flag, etc., etc. If you see this one from the Biden-Harris campaign in 2020, similar color scheme. You've got both the president and VP names on there. Sometimes you would see Trump with Pence really small compared to the really big Trump. The difference in size in the president and VP candidates on this one's a little bit closer in size. But note, what this is kind of done here. You see the E that's kind of turned to make it look like an American flag a little bit. Those stripes on the flag kind of grabs your attention. So you want to be doing things that grab people's attention for sure. Now, besides getting a, nice, catchy logo and slogan and, stuff like that, you want to be mindful of who you are going to be prioritizing in terms of trying to target for voters. What is becoming more and more of the typical playbook is not so much trying to win over people that are, diametrically opposed to you ideologically or based on demographic data likely to be diametrically opposed to you. You're trying to focus on people that are likely to support you, but may not necessarily have the best turnout rate. So, for example, if you are, a Democrat candidate, you might be, trying to cultivate a lot of Latino voters. Latino voters tend to vote Democrat, but not necessarily, have high voter turnout. So a lot of that energy might be targeted towards, towards that group to try to mobilize the vote, as opposed to try to win over in terms of policy. And of course, as we've said before, if you're running for president, you can't do it alone. You got to have a massive team to help you out. You got to have, campaign managers to kind of keep your team all on the same page, to coordinate what the campaign is going to be doing. You need pollsters to kind of see how you're doing on the campaign. Are you up? Are you down? What are the trend lines showing? And what are the things that are affecting those trend lines? Public relations advisors, those that are going to be setting up events to help promote you. Maybe it's a speech, a rally, some sort of a staged media event. You got to have people working on that. You got to have, in the 21st century, people working on social media, promoting you on Facebook, promoting you on Instagram and things like that. And, all of these different kinds of advisory jobs are really specialty consulting gigs. And, we are seeing more and more people with political science backgrounds moving into these areas. And, many of these folks are, hired guns. And many of these folks are not even particularly ideological. Some of these campaign not managers necessarily, but pollsters will go from a Republican campaign to a Democrat campaign and back and forth, and they go where they're going to be hired. Now, of course, running for president, probably the most important part of the campaign is showcasing the candidates, and you want to be always showcasing the candidate in as positive a light as possible. And of course, figuring out what is positive, that's where polling comes in. So you got to be saying, hey, when this candidate said this at this speech, how did that track? Did that track positively? Oh, okay, it did. Well, then try to make a point to bring that up in future speeches, future rallies that you're talking about. If you did this at this event and it didn't go over that well, don't do that again. And so, all of and what might seem like minutia is actually closely monitored by the PR folks and the pollsters and people like that to help guide that candidate on the campaign trail to repeat the sound bites that are popular, to avoid, topics that might be too contentious, things like that. And of course, it's not just traditional polling, but the use of focus groups. So, professional, advertisers always use focus groups to kind of get a sense through not just quantitative data, but qualitative data as to, how the candidate is doing, and it can be as seemingly inconsequential as how does that candidate look in that color of a tie? Do you like the fact that Donald Trump always wears a suit? Or do you like a candidate that is, more likely to wear a polo shirt on the on the campaign trail? Things as superficial as that can actually be part of the process. Remember, you're trying to appeal to every possible type of voter and what motivates them, be it policies, be it how you look, be it how you talk, all those kinds of things play a role. Of course, the more media coverage, the better. So you got to have a media specialist that's going to be very good with public relations to constantly get you on the media, constantly on television, constantly getting interviewed, getting constant exposure. You've got to be on the minds of people all the time so you are seen as a viable candidate. And, robocalls traditionally play a role on that. You might, get a call to your cell phone saying, "Hi, I am Joe Biden, and I wanted to let you know about Election Day coming up, yada, yada, yada." Or, "Hi, my name is Donald Trump, and wanted to let you know about, Election Day coming up, yada, yada, yada." So you're constantly, constantly trying to engage with the public to let them know that you are out there. You're constantly, advertising yourself. But note, when you're talking about advertising yourself, you want to make sure that you have this positive image when you are promoting yourself. You want to, have advertising that kind of shows your backstory, shows your origin story in terms of where you came from, especially if you come from humble origins. Maybe there was some, sort of challenge that you had to overcome as a young person that made you who you are today. We saw, for example, in the case of Barack Obama, a kid from Hawaii, coming from a multicultural background, trying to, overcome the fact that his parents were divorced and stuff like that, but still goes on to, go on to Harvard Law School and yada, yada, yada. That can be very impactful. And at the same time, as you are promoting yourself in a positive way, you are constantly trying to use opposition research, or as they call it, oppo research, to find the dirty details of your opponent. Now, it can be, as mundane as just differences on policy, what you want to attack in terms of policy that you think might be unpopular, or it might be, showcasing something scandalous that has happened in that candidate's past. Maybe there was a financial scandal of some sort that they were a part of. Well, you're going to be, letting voters know, reminding them of that negative thing associated with your opponent. Of course, making sure the candidate looks good on debates. Underdogs tend to do a little bit better on the debates than the incumbents. But it's not even so much that you have to do well. You just have to exceed expectations. Incumbents tend to have higher expectations than challengers. So bottom line is, whatever your expectations are, you want to exceed them, which means you hope the expectations are low going in. When we talk about, of course, TV coverage, you want to get at that as much as you can, especially with, the fact that most of your older voters, your more reliable voters, still get most of their media information, most of their news information from the television. So you still got to get on television a lot. And there's different kinds of, ways that you can do that. You can pay for advertising, and you can easily craft that message and tailor it exactly the way that you want it to be. But of course, the downside to that is that it is expensive, and it can drain your resources. It can drain your coffers financially on the campaign very, very quickly. So yeah, you're going to do some of that, but you can't entirely rely on that. And that's why you also want to be, doing things that are really what would be considered free media advertising. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, the idea being is that you are doing something that is going to get the media's attention. And then when they broadcast that, when they report on that, they are then getting your name out there. And that has the same impact as, paid advertising. Donald Trump did a tremendously effective job on the campaign trail in 2015 and early 2016, beating out his Republican rivals for the nomination by constantly getting media coverage at all of his rallies, at all of his speeches. And part of it was the fact that he was so non-conventional in his speeches. He was willing to be off the cuff and to be audacious and to be, not exactly politically correct. And, it became more of like events and shows than, just a normal political speech. Well, you've got the media reporting on it and broadcasting it live. A lot of these speeches were just broadcast live on like CNN, MSNBC, in addition to Fox News. Well, that's an advantage. I mean, you can't even put a price tag on that. But beyond that, in a more conventional sense, what your campaign would probably want to try to do is to stage events that would make you look good and would get the media's attention. Like, for example, if you are, Joe Biden, you are going to let the media know, hey, we're going to be visiting, this local factory, for example, that's working on, making cars. And when the candidate shows up and shakes the hands with the workers and yada, 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 it shows that the candidate's relatable. It shows in this particular case that the candidate cares about, the manufacturing sector of the economy, cares about working class, blue-collar Americans, that kind of stuff. And you can see here, Joe Biden, and no, this is probably focus grouped, I'm sure, noticeably not wearing a tie when hanging out with blue-collar folks that don't work with ties. Here's another example here, Donald Trump visiting a school. The idea being is that, oh, okay, he's there, the media's following him, and what message is sending it? It shows that he cares about education. He cares about our future, all of those kinds of things. So, you want to have, yes, paid advertising, but you can't solely rely on that. You have to effectively craft free advertising, in essence, from media events that are covered by the news. And to kind of just round this out, once again, don't forget about, the growing power of social media, especially amongst trying to court younger voters, those under the age of 40. We've seen that there's a lot of upsides to it. Social media costs are about a third of what you would see on TV. So, you can spend that money in a way that is really effective because it has a viral impact. You can target folks very easily using psychographics. We've mentioned that before. However, we have seen, along with this, the growth of what we call dark ads. And these are unpublished posts that they find on, for example, Facebook, that are done in a way that, unlike a normal social media post that it's put out there for the public and everybody kind of sees it, well, you are then allowing, in this case, you're allowing unpublished posts to be shown to people that have a certain, interest in something or a certain viewpoint on a topic that you don't necessarily want the public to see because it might offend others. And there's some controversy with that because they're unpublished, but that is proving to be effective. We saw the Trump campaign doing a decent amount of this in 2016. Okay? All right, so that's some aspects you want to be considering with regards to modern campaigning. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.